regression therapy is a therapeutic tool that helps clients to access some unconscious material and to reorganize it in such a way that it transforms you or helps you with your next stage in current life. What NDE or clinical death survivors described is extremely similar to what my clients can describe in their sessions. There is a certain riverbanks, which we can call faith, and this is what we call maybe soul path. And the river has different directions it can flow. It can flow fast, it can flow through the stones. And if you stumble on something or it's temporarily something that's uncomfortable, you don't have to compare yourself. You will realign, you will. And if you need help in that, ask your friends, sit with your close ones who will elevate you on your elevation path.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Awareness Club podcast. Today, my guest was having a pretty conventional trajectory in life until 2015, when she was having a session of regression, which would change her life, become her passion and a profession. And today, she is offering it to others into discovering themselves, elevating themselves, and discover their path in life. Today, with me, Janna Aidarkhanova. I'm so glad to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me.
So let's start with the beginning, with this session that you were having and you were experiencing for the first time. How was it for you on a personal side?
Yes. My session of regression therapy in 2015 was quite transformative. And it was on the back of me reading a book by Michael Newton called Journey of Souls. It was recommended for me by a lady who came to Monaco, and she was speaking originally about feminine energy and bringing more femininity in the relationships into the lives of women. It resonated with me, but what struck me when we had a personal conversation with a beautiful lady called Tatiana Jiva, she was mentioning something like, my children in my past lives, or my father, or my partner. And she saw how incredulous I was with this information, and she told me, why don't you read a book by Michael Newton? It talks about life between lives. Honestly, I brushed it off at the beginning, and then for 10 mornings in a row, I would wake up and I hear the words, Michael Newton, Life Between Lives. Michael Newton, Life Between Lives. And every time I brushed it off, the voice would just be louder and louder in the morning. And to me, it was amazing because I always considered myself having bad memory with remembering the books that I read, the titles, the authors. But this one was there with me, even I haven't read a book. So eventually I went on the internet, and it was freely available, PDF. I read it in Russian. And it struck me because it was written in a very medical dissertation kind of way. So it wasn't a narrative or fiction. It was case number 1, case number 2, case number 3. So I definitely wanted to experience something like this, because what it showed, the book, that some clients could actually access very big philosophical questions about the meaning of their life, their mission, their relationships. So I think I had lots of questions at that point about especially the meaning of the relationship, the next step, because as you said, there's a conventional script that many people follow. And when your family breaks up, there is not a script written what to do afterwards. And I think I was very lost and feeling very empty without without understanding what the next stage is going to be. And my first regression therapy was with a beautiful British therapist, but she lived in Italy, so I could just drive there. It was an amazing experience. I wouldn't say it was hugely content-rich for me, but it was just something that I could feel there were some sides of me, either or resourceful qualities in me that maybe were presented to me as if it was a character from the past life. And probably, I don't know if it was me, but there was somebody I felt I could be bigger than what I was playing out or living as Janna at that point. And I wouldn't say that that session gave me the answers to any of my questions, but it gave me something that I think 3 months later I could really use, some resources, some qualities. And when I realized how helpful it was for me retrospectively, I definitely wanted to experience more of that. And I was actually interested to understand how it works. And I signed myself up to the training in the summer of 2016. And after that, every 3-6 months, there was another training and another training, which finally led me to receive a certification of Michael Newton Life Between Lives facilitator. And there are about 200 therapists like us. And we are very happy to help people with the transformations through regression therapy, as it helped me.
So, life between lives, it sounds very interesting. What is this space between lives?
Yes. Well, the book Journey of Souls starts with a story of how hypnotherapist Michael Newton, who was trauma therapy trained hypnotherapist, he discovered this space where his clients would go and kind of receive a perspective on their current lives from a space as if between reincarnations. It was very interesting when I read it. He wasn't necessarily very religious or spiritual. He was traditionally medically trained. But when he would ask his clients to go to the source of their problem, of their deconstructive pattern, of their negative emotion, he already, by that time, he got used to the experience where his clients would go somewhere that is beyond their current life. What by that time, it was already called past life therapy. In those past lives, they would describe themselves as some characters having some kind of events. And once that was processed and reorganized for them, they would come out feeling much better. So this time, I think the client that he described as opening that space, surprisingly for him, was a lady who suffered from deep loneliness. And when he asked her to go to the source of that loneliness, she started describing that she's seeing her family. And when he said, "What kind of family are you talking about?" And she said, "Oh, it's a family. Is it a family from your previous life?" Because he was already accustomed to that. He said, "No, it's my spiritual family. And they are reminding me that it was my choice to come to this life without any of the soulmates or any of us helping her, because she felt that she could do it on her own." So he started to explore that space and realized that a lot of his clients could access life between lives space and talk about the spiritual family, their spiritual soulmates who come to either support or help us with the lessons. So, of course, my desire was to go into that space. However, on the first session that I had, It was a past life regression that was experienced, or what we call past life. But it's basically feeling yourself in a different kind of being who is looking at the world with a different perspective, having different emotional setup. And that expands your current life setup and gives you different perspectives on things. So in that sense, regression therapy is a therapeutic tool that helps clients to access some unconscious material and to reorganize it in such a way that it transforms you or helps you with your next stage in current life.
We are actually speaking about us living in different bodies in other times, so past lives, or it's something that is coming from the collective and we are remembering through the collective consciousness.
We, as therapists, we're not really interested where this experience coming from, whether it's collective unconscious, whether it's some kind of soul DNA past life, or maybe some archetypal energies. We are interested that the experience that the client goes to is meaningful and transformative for them. And whether it comes from their past lives or some kind of a life from collective unconscious, or some kind of a archetypal energy scenarios. We don't have to explain these things, although there is a lot of research about past lives that Stevenson and Jim Tucker have done. They studied spontaneous memories of children from past lives. That's the only explanation that they could give, because some things that the children could give as their prior lives, they were verifiable facts in terms of geography, people. So there's a lot of research on past lives through spontaneous remembering of children. However, how we use past life therapy is quite different. It doesn't have to be literal or factual. It could be symbolic. And as long as it is, some kind of pattern or energetic blockage is released, is what we care about as therapists.
We can go much deeper, but I would like to take a concept that is at the fundament of our discussion, which is consciousness. What is consciousness?
Well, we use consciousness in a sense that there is conscious material and there is an unconscious material. And maybe what you ask me as consciousness is probably taking it all together. But some people, we do not live fully consciously of our patterns and of our material all the time. So regression therapy actually helps us to access the unconscious material, bring it to the surface of awareness in order for clients to stop repeating some unconscious and sometimes maybe destructive, negative patterns, but return to them the freedom of choice. They might come out of the regression saying, yes, this is the belief, the limiting belief that I've acquired when I was young, because it doesn't have to be necessarily always past lives or life between lives. It could very well be that regression therapy focuses on current life, and there is this, what we call inner child healing, which reorganizes the limiting beliefs that children sometimes make, and certain fears, certain triggers that trigger them through life. And by returning to the place where that limiting belief was formed from the perspective of a more mature, conscious adult, this can be recognized, processed, and on a daily basis, it's a material that is conscious. As a therapist, I am defining consciousness this way, and I'm not going to be defining consciousness, like go into definition of ultimate reality. I know there's different definitions and different philosophical approaches to defining consciousness, but I keep it experiential to my therapy. Mm-hmm.
Now, because you are speaking about the inner child, a lot of the guests here were speaking about it. How do you find the working with the inner child, the potential that lies inside of it?
Yes, in fact, Life Between Lives sessions, they are divided into several sessions. And sometimes people cannot go straight to the spiritual dimension or spiritual perspective because they need to clear or to process a lot of trauma or limiting beliefs on the way to spiritual dimension. And sometimes I would have to spend the whole session with inner child healing or with a past life therapy before we can go to the spiritual dimension. And inner child therapy is incredibly powerful because again, it's the same methodology of asking a client, where do you think this limiting belief or this trauma is coming from? And I must say that regression therapy uses a very focused state of awareness or consciousness where, with the help of relaxing the body, what we call induction, a person gets into this very focused state and they have an ability to recall or reconstruct certain memories or scenes where certain events maybe have formed a belief or certain pattern in a being and in a human being, in a client. And by going there and reorganizing that, reprocessing that from a different point of view, from a more mature adult point of view, and integrating that inner child within you, because part of the methodology is also not just seeing that child, recognizing and giving it what it needed at that point where it didn't receive it, is a very powerful technique. And there is a little ritual of integration that comes, which we'll call inner child integration. And normally it's very powerful because people start to recognize that sometimes they just need to respect that child, calm it down in themselves, and a lot of times that inner child or the younger self, what we call younger self, can give a lot of tips and resources for the older self. So it becomes like a double healing. Remind, for instance, of an adult to be more playful, remind them to live in the moment, not to worry so much, all kinds of different tips.
And when we're speaking about the inner child, so we are referring to ourselves being a child. And what is the age span that we are referring to?
So we actually go to the strongest or to the earliest place where this pattern or this belief or this feeling has been generated. And this is how past lives were discovered, because by asking, do you feel like you were born with it? They would say, yes, I was born with it. So where is the source of that? And they would go to the past lives. But a lot of times we see that the child could be 3 years old, 4 years old. A very simple fear of feeling that they were abandoned in their cradle, even if it was not true, can create that pattern of feeling abandoned. And in different philosophies or psychologies, we see that the pattern or that fear starts to form the reality for the client, for the adult, because when you're feeling abandoned, you kind of attract or you see all the triggers of abandonment around you. Because the self wants to free or liberate itself from that pattern, so it would keep attracting or repeating that. By transforming and reframing that initial belief, this whole, we look at that belief at the very early stage in life. And then when you return to all these events that the client has described, they will actually see it differently. They'll say, now I'm not afraid of being bullied at school. Now I can stand up. So you kind of go back to here and now. And the client, they can even, instead of regression, you can have a progression. So the things that, the events that they might fear experiencing in the future because they're scared of public speaking or being rejected, by having had that transformation with a younger self, they will see it differently in the future, because that trigger is now consciously has been processed, and the person has a freedom of choice. And when in the future they might have that same trigger, they have that, oh, it comes from that event that, but I'm an adult. I don't have to feel or think that way anymore. I have a choice. So that's the core of the therapy.
We were discussing about the inner child, but you also were mentioning the spiritual field. How would you describe that concept?
Yes, again, it's a beautiful concept of such an expansion of the self beyond the limits of the current personality, which we call transpersonal. Transpersonal field or transpersonal self, where you can actually have like a helicopter view on your life and sometimes on the past life, and make connections of the patterns that transcend one lifetime. Clients might even talk about a particular quality or lesson that they are engaging in by coming into this particular life. So for somebody, like on Sunday, I had an amazing session with a client who regressed to a past life as she's a female client, but she regressed to a lifetime of a female, but in her space of lives between lives, she referred to herself in the male gender. And she said, I actually have a very distinct male gender in the spiritual dimension. That's why I'm coming to, I'm choosing female bodies to kind of balance it out, to experience what it is. If in that past life she was talking about just familiarizing herself with a female identity, here she was already experiencing motherhood and the creation of life and parenting and the qualities that that brings with her with this experience. So it is quite amazing what clients come up with or create, and I feel very privileged to be part of that space.
It is another concept of hypnotherapy. Is any difference between them? And if so, what is that?
Well, in hypnotherapy and in regression therapy, we use a focused state of consciousness, which is very similar to meditative state, but in fact it is a guided meditation. And a lot of people engage in meditation. A lot of people can listen to guided meditations on YouTube. It is basically the same. However, with the help of a facilitator, we use the language to deepen the client into the experiences by asking the questions that are open questions, like how are you feeling and how does this feel for you? And this way a client deepens more and more into their somatic and emotional being, describing what things come up. So Hypnotherapy there are different types of hypnotherapy. There is clinical hypnotherapy where people go to maybe they just get into this meditative state, and a hypnotherapist, they read a script for them, in order to quit smoking, lose weight. So there is not really an interaction with a client. In regression therapy, I start to communicate with client. I'm constantly communicating with client. Maybe there is 15 minutes of induction where people focus themselves, but with my guidance on watching their breathing, relaxing their body progressively from head to toe, from toe to head. As a regression therapist, I have to always keep in mind the intention of the client, and that's a whole period before a client comes to the therapy. There is a consultation, there is a questionnaire. I understand what a client might be struggling with, or what maybe they're curious about. It doesn't have to be always trauma-oriented. There are a lot of people who just want to experience it out of curiosity. I could probably say I did it out of curiosity, but in fact, no, In fact, I had a very strong intention. And when people say, I just want to experience it out of curiosity, in fact, what comes up is something that they need at that point in life. And I just say, choose something as an intention, because it's good to have that energetic line to follow during the regression. And sometimes people come with an intention and something else is being revealed to them, something probably more meaningful to them for the next stage of life.
And I want to go even further, because you are having an analytical mind. How do you guide? How do you know where to go?
Well, yes, as you mentioned, I'm coming from a financial background. My first education was in business, in finance, international business. So for me, it was a long process of learning how to guide myself and my clients. There is a methodology, of course, that I follow from the training, but there is also a learning to make space for the client. And that's something that took me a long time, because having a strong analytical mind, my mind was always running ahead for quite a while before I could trust that something can come from the client to learn from that space I create. And I think my training was quite transformative for me, because when we practiced with my colleagues, trainees, and they would say, oh, I would like to work on my procrastination. And my mind would make all the tips that I read from self-help books, self-development books. And what would come up from a client was a completely different story, never coinciding with my mind. And so I had to put my mind away, and I only use it to observe and to follow a certain structure, to keep in mind the intention of the client. And knowing that my client is in a deeply meditative state, not really analyzing deeply. And I ask them, don't analyze, don't try to look for answers. I'm there, and at the end of the session, we will pull it all together. And as I said, when we all engage in meditation, it is normally we're trying to achieve a certain stable state of calm, of bliss, of comfort. But during regression sessions, we use that state, however, by moving the client through the session to get the meaning of the experience in order for them to integrate it and transform their current life. This is where the guidance comes from.
You are describing me a professional evolution, but if I take out some words, I'm remaining with a discovering process of yourself, of a personal evolution, of how do you tune in into yourself, align to yourself, and arrive to use your intuition more than you were doing before.
Oh, absolutely. As I said in my first session as a client, I've discovered there is this whole subconscious world. And my training initially was to discover more of it for me, to go through the healing of a breakup of my family, and to start, like, everything felt to me is like everything broke down. My house of cards that I've been building has broken down, and where do I go from there? And what is the guidance for me there? Because the scripts don't tell you about the societal scripts kind of stop at that point, yes? So especially in my country, I think it's very family-oriented. Less so in Europe or America, where more than 50% divorce rate. So I think children are starting to get used to to separate parent families and different scenarios. But for me, I didn't have a script. It was like diving into unknown. And I'm very glad that regression therapy gave me a peek of how I could get that internal guidance for myself. And once I got that peek, as I told you before, I tried other therapies. I've tried psychedelic retreats. I've been doing breath work, different feminine circles, retreats, yoga, kundalini yoga, different practices and journeys. But I've always come back to regression therapy as the most transformative for me and for my clients. Because, first of all, I consider it the most ecological in terms of you don't have to ingest anything, you don't have to go out for a long retreat. And now that I'm doing 90% of my sessions online, the clients don't even have to leave the comfort of their room, of their house, of their bed. And they can go very deep and receive a lot of meaningful information through these therapies. And this information is not necessarily cognitive or verbal. It is a transformation on a deep psychological and even cellular, physical level. Because a lot of the states that clients go through a regression, they are very resourceful states of them, like for myself, feeling with a different setup of values, perspectives, emotions, which are expanding their current, sometimes very conditioned, limited view of how they were raised.
How would you define trauma? Because we keep on using this term, and I would like to hear your definition.
Okay. Trauma is an unconscious following of a pattern that is not constructive for a client in their current life. So some negative event, like a choice of a relationship that is not good for the client keeps repeating itself. And this can be traced to some event or the belief, as I said, unconscious limiting belief that keeps repeating. So I wouldn't necessarily say that all the regression therapy that I do is connected to trauma. In fact, the more and more I do life between lives, if we do not encounter some blockage or energetic or emotional blockage on the way, because that's what trauma creates on an energetic level or body level. It's some kind of constriction, and the energy doesn't flow, and the scenarios of reality starts to repeat themselves. Then it's just maybe not there. So a lot of regression therapy therapies that I conduct, they come, clients leave with resourceful states, expansive states, bypassing the trauma altogether because they don't need it. And that's what was my experience at first. I didn't want to go into the past life because I'm thinking, oh, the past was so violent and dark and dirty, and probably I've done things that I'm ashamed of. But in fact, I was given a very resourceful experience there that I could integrate in my current life. So I would say that it's, I don't want people to associate regression therapy with trauma, but rather with resourcefulness. And if there is some energetic blockage, that by processing that, releasing that blockage, which may have or may not have content, Sometimes the body work doesn't even need a content. It's just feeling of constriction somewhere that needs to be released. And there are techniques that we use for that. And the energy starts flowing, person starts to feel more liberated and transformed as a result. Not immediately, it could be after some time. And the books that you read about past life regression or inner child regression, they are by therapists who actually follow their clients through some time to see if that has an effect. And there is a lot of evidence to that it's not even sometimes logical, but there is therapeutic efficacy in this therapy.
From your perspective and understanding, do you consider that we have a destiny? And if so, it is that destiny that we are choosing before coming into this life?
Well, according to Michael Newton, the souls even program their lives or kind of script it in a way. Whether we as humans beings follow this script or not is, again, it's every moment we have a choice of how to go. And there might be impediments, obstacles on the way, but even some traumatic events seem to be predestined by the soul, because soul, if we talk about the transpersonal self, the perspective is quite different from how we feel the embodied pain. But like a client I had just this Sunday, she even could verbalize. There are things that I've planned for this lifetime, but I already feel that I will not be able to accomplish. But I'll do it next time, very calmly, not feeling like a victim, So it's
Peace.
At peace, letting go. I still have time to enjoy my life. Actually, she was saying, I have much more potential than I thought to realize certain things that I want. But maybe not everything. So that kind of perspective gives a person a feeling of empowerment, liberation, hope. Yeah.
I know that you are conducting researches. What did you find most interesting during your career that stays with you and would be nice to share it with our public?
As a director of research, I am my primary function is to encourage regression therapists to engage in research, because it is quite a different field from being a therapist and being a researcher. And that's where the analytical mind comes. And I remember when I was certifying, I was doing cases for certification of Michael Newton. I specifically took cases of people who never read Michael Newton's book in order for myself to see how transformative are these sessions without people reading the books, and do they actually go to that space of spiritual dimension that he discovered by just following his methodology, which is not leading at all. It's open questions. What happens next? What happens next? What happens next? And I was amazed that 6 people that I had regression with who never read the book described the experiences very similar to what he wrote, about attuning to some guiding energy, to getting higher perspective or wider perspective on their life. So it all fit. If I didn't get that, I would probably not take this job so seriously. But so there is a research and skeptical mind always, because maybe it's only me. Also, I think I'm using many more open questions because I'm always curious what comes up. Now, before my mind was a little bit nervous. Now I don't even, sometimes my pre-talk is so short with a client. I get the intention, whether it will come or not. And I want to get into that space where they start to get that meaning from themselves, from the space, from spiritual dimension, from the mystery that we're all participating in. I don't know. But it's always interesting, always new, and very individual to each client what comes up for them.
How does near-death experience studies support your field?
Oh yes, very, very similar. What NDE or clinical death survivors described is extremely similar to what my clients can describe in their sessions. Whether it is, I sometimes ask myself whether it is already, they're creating it because they've read maybe the book, they've read about clinical death experiences, or maybe their religious beliefs kind of pre-position them to describe the similar experiences. It doesn't matter, because if they feel something sacred, something expansive, something wise that they're entering, or that is descending on them, then that's all that matters. And if they can get some kind of guidance or tips from that, or just lie in that state and feel it through them, feel the immortality of the soul, release all their fears, release all their conditioning for success that they're not meeting probably, that itself is transformative. And that's just a little bit. And I told you before that going through the past life death is very transformative for people, because a lot of phobias are essentially a fear of death. And by being guided through how the soul energy or the energy of consciousness leaves the body and where it travels, how it feels, it's also helps with loads of phobias and fears.
I will go further and I will have the same question for psychedelics. How the studies with psychedelics and also your personal experience is supporting?
Yes, I've tried a few psychedelic substances, and I saw how they help in relaxing this analytical, limiting mind, and how you can start to get information on a different level about richness of life. Everyone's probably also very different with their experiences, and I've seen people who have been going through psychedelics in processing of their trauma. But what I found, I was very lucky to go into psychedelic retreats and ceremonies and ingest psychedelics with already training that I had with hypnotherapy, because self-hypnosis or self-guidance is something that we are taught. So I could hold that guidance of intention that I would put and get a lot of information. But I do have some clients who come to me after even 20, 40 ceremonies that they had, because they would have what they would call a transformative experience with psychedelics, but they didn't really integrate it into a meaningful realization. And with the help of a one-on-one guidance in regression therapy, you actually help them integrate immediately what comes up. So it's not just a flow of images and emotional states that clients go through, but with the guidance, there's more structure. And of course, in the after talk from the regression, the client, and with my help, they can see that everything they've experienced is actually relating to their intention. Not to say that psychedelics were not transformational for me, but because I could have an intention and actually have an experience that would answer that intention. But I also saw lots of people who are going through traumatic release or some kind of blockage release. And I wish that they had one-on-one. There were assistants, and during the ceremonies you have assistants actually who help. And it's good that if they're trained in helping people process this. But the caution has to be exercised with psychedelics, and choosing the right setting, the right facilitator or shaman is very important for that.
And now, just to raise a bit awareness about what means and how we can do at home, maybe if we don't have others, the post-event integration of psychedelics or of other experiences. How can one help themselves into this process?
Yes, integration is actually where the transformation happens, I think. And what I offer is, of course, a little after talk after the session, but also people always, my clients are welcome to come back to me. However, I do not interpret things that they experience because they're very often on a somatic, energetic level, very personal to them. What I offer is the recording that they can watch, the questions that they can ask. However, I still think that it's the time and reflection, self-reflection, that people have to engage in order to make all the healing links and integration and little conclusion. But sometimes not even that. It's just the time speaking to like-minded people, relating the experiences with others. Of course, you have to be careful who you speak to. If you had a great experience with psychedelics, you're not going to run to your mom and say, "Mom, I digested something and now I'm transformed." You're probably going to scare your parents more than they can help you. But it takes a bit of time to integrate these experiences, all types of experiences that involve altered states of consciousness.
When we go through altered states of consciousness, we transcend through frequencies, through layers, and we become more softer or more in a high frequency layers. What happens when you go through the process and you go on down frequency layers?
When we call it a process of awakening, which is also a very slow process. It's not immediate. But during that awakening process, there are a lot of affirmations. During the session, I write what the client says. And a lot of the affirmations that come from the client, in their words, I'm reading to them and always saying, now you know this, how that dimension is for you. You can always return to it. It's always in your heart. Your inner child is in your heart. It's integrated to you. You can always return to that state. And they do feel not that they are disconnecting, but it's actually that they're integrating it. So when they're waking up, they're not waking up on the same frequency as they were. They've already integrated all that experience, all those resourceful states, as you call, to this frequency with more enthusiasm and joy to continue on. What people say, this duality, this matrix. As a therapist, I am watchful that my clients don't find this therapy as an escapism from everyday life. The regression therapy is successful if a client comes with more desire to live further, with more curiosity, with more clarity, with more coherence. Yeah, I've never had someone who would want to come back and say, oh, I want to repeat it tomorrow after tomorrow after tomorrow. I don't want to live in this life ever again because it's so blissful out there. No, the whole intention of the session is to make a client more enthusiastic and curious about living the next stage of life with the resources, with the transformation they've experienced, or will integrate further as they live on.
So it is a minimum period of time that you or person should have between sessions?
I let my clients choose when they want to come back for another session. Because for me, honestly, the first time I wanted to experience life between lives, but past life regression was so transformative that it took me maybe half a year before I said I want to try another one. It was just before my training, actually, and I've experienced the life between lives, and I must say it was not so transformative as a past life regression. So and for everyone, it's different at different lives. Maybe because I've already was at a different stage of life. So it's so I tell my clients, and my clients choose to do past life and early childhood or womb regression one weekend and life between lives the second weekend, or they choose to have a break of half a year, sometimes a year. But I must say that 80% of my clients now, they are able to access spiritual dimension or spiritual perspective from the first session. So that's why I don't limit it in time. If I see there's energy of the person to continue on, then we do the full session in the first time. And then they might come to me back or refer their friends later on after a year, after 2 years.
But do you see people that understand the process, that go with your guidance and then apply it alone at home?
Alone at home? Well, I know that a lot of people do try because it's a financial investment. So some people might want to have something like that, but at the current time they're not able to afford it or something. So they come to me and saying, I've tried it before, I got some glimpses, but not really fully. And once I guide them through the session, they say, oh, this is a much more fuller session. Because as I told you, in meditation, we tend to kind of stay in one state, but with somebody pushing you and having your intention in mind, it is a much more fuller, more integrated and wholesome session. Can people do it at home? I've tried it for myself because as a therapist, I'm thinking, I can access the state, and I really need a colleague to help me. Even if I have my questions, they need to read it to me because your analytical mind is only...
It's not active, and you need a grounding pillar in order to support the direction, because the state is there. It just matters that where to go from that state.
Exactly. Very well said. And the thing is, I mean, this is a trade-off because you want the analytical mind to step away, but then once it steps away, where is the structure and the guidance, Exactly. So I ask my clients, analytical minds, as if I'm speaking to analytical mind, to step away, but to be curious what comes up from the other dimensions. So instead of interpreting right away, and some clients, they engage in interpreting, but I warn them that, analytical mind has not been helpful so far to this day, otherwise you wouldn't be here. So why don't we ask it to be curious and just to engage in describing what comes up? And it's very busy there. Sometimes I would ask an analytical question. Does it resonate with your current life energies? Or does it resonate with something you are experiencing right now from before? So there's, it's not as such a strict separation between conscious mind and unconscious mind. It's a theoretical concept that doesn't really exist. We are trained as 21st and 20th century people to work from one part everyday functioning part more than from what some people call intuitive or heart part, where a lot of unconscious material is. But a lot of time we refer to it as gut feeling. We know that certain decisions are not logical, but you need to follow that decision because your heart says so. So we are actually constantly operating through the whole, what you say, consciousness or awareness, but some material, we lose our freedom of choice because it is some kind of a blockage there or a limiting belief sitting there. So it's good to know yourself by engaging in these therapies, by listening to your heart, by meditating. And yeah.
Do you ever experience interference in your guidance, like entities or something else?
Oh, yeah, I heard in some of your podcasts you were talking about that. And I'm happy I was trained with that because different what you call frequencies, we might have what we call in the therapy spirit attachments or fragments of energies. In a way, you can say that limiting beliefs are those entities. They are those, energetic stucknesses. But these energies can form into something more solid. And there are different specializations that regression therapists have, and we have to be trained in what we call spirit attachment release. Because during these periods of focused awareness, you can feel that something is interfering. And this is something also took me some time to feel intuitively or energetically. It comes not just with knowledge, but with experience, where a client might actually, instead of entering an expansive and wise or, positive state, they actually go deeper into something darker and more accusive or blaming. And as therapists, you also learn to navigate the frequencies, and you see that this is not where the client should be going frequency-wise, yes? So I've been training. It's not my specialization. Sometimes I can refer clients who I feel there's an interference to other people, but I'm trained to in releasing those energies, even speaking to them. Normally, it's not a full type like we might think. Even I think ghosts are fragmented energies of maybe people who died, but some parts of it either attached to the house, to home. There are people who specialize in earth clearing, where there may be battlefields where soldiers were killed and some lower energy frequency is placed. So I have all kinds of connections with people who do incredible things. And as we learn through therapy, through training, all these different specializations, people intuitively gravitate to one another. And for me, it's past life and spiritual regression that attracted me most. But that doesn't mean that I'm not trained to navigate.
in today's world, we are having people that are more and more open towards all these transformational practices, activities, and so on. And I wanted to ask you, how did you saw the evolution in the past 10 years or 15 years?
Absolutely. And the book by Michael Newton was written in the 80s, early 90s. There are several books. And the cases that he had of clients were from 60s, 70s. He had more than 5,000 cases. But in the book, you have the most maybe memorable or exemplary to the benefits of the therapy. What we see now is something that I couldn't necessarily put in a system of philosophy or what exists beyond earthly life, because everyone's so different, and they might even talk about lives on different planets or being from a different dimension altogether, you know. So it's incredible what things come up, but it's not the descriptive things that amaze me, but again, the transformative potential. Even something that they describe as life on a different planet brings resource for them that they can use here today. And they might see that on that other planet there was something that was missing that is present here. You know, like the range of emotions from negative to positive. You know, it's a huge emotional spectrum that we have a privilege to have access to feel viscerally, which might not be present in the spiritual dimension, where it's the perspective is always seems to be quite positive, blissful, expansive. But here you get like tested on that. Can you carry that spiritual core through all the challenges through life? And many people can. Many people have to be reminded that they can.
And what is your personal opinion? Do you think that all this evolutionary path that we are here to experience is coming on the foundation of content that we are registering through our life or transgenerational, or is something that we are really accessing in terms of other fields, other consciousness on other planets, and so on?
I respect what life on earth gives to us. Yes, we have five senses. We're trying to access the sixth sense of intuition. And that's sometimes plenty already. Of course, if we get that integration of unconscious patterns, of those, if we get the glimpse of what we are, what we can be, but we all want to live to our full potential. And I have lots of clients who come with a request. I want to develop and access more of my other feelings, other psychic abilities that I feel I can have. Or there's a lot of regressions into the lives even on this planet, where they could feel how the herbs could talk to them or tell them what to, you know, herbalists or what we call witches even, or healers that were much more connected to Earth than we are right now. And remembering that, or some other resources from different dimensions, the idea is to integrate it and to live life here to the fullest. Maybe in the evolutionary path, we will be able to integrate our knowledge and our experience from other planets, from other dimensions. But I find life is rich enough as the way it is. And I have developed some guidance to help me lead the sessions to the best of my ability. That's good for me. I'm not trying to use clairvoyance or myself. And I know a lot of people with clairvoyance, they are learning to be regression therapists as well. But the methodology is that we actually have to ask the client, because what the clairvoyants can see during the session and what comes up from the client, we have to be respectful first and foremost of what is coming from the client.
How do you see that faith is helping or creating the frame for somebody's evolutionary path?
Well, faith is always something that kind of contradicts in the mind with the freedom of choice. And I say there's, like with astrology, because I also had a lot of astrological readings for me, and sometimes I was amazed and frustrated, saying, how did you know that this will happen to me in 2016? Do I even have freedom of choice? Because it was pre-written in the planets or in the stars for me. I want to live my life not according to the planets. I want to live despite of them, that. And so, but what I was explained and what I see in maybe my clients and myself is that there is a certain riverbanks which we can call faith, and this is what we call maybe soul path. And the river has different directions it can flow. It can flow fast, it can flow through the stones, but the range of freedom of choice is still quite expansive and huge, but we still have the banks. So yeah, this I was telling your co-founders that I am researching a concept of authentic self, and I think if we are going too far from our fate, we are being put up and we feel it as unauthentic, and as if we are too far from our flow of life. And I really hope the regression therapy actually helps with that, just bringing you back into the flow, into your banks, more centered, more clear. So fate is probably some kind of destiny plan is there, because when you are going too far from your authentic path, it starts to feel uncomfortable for us, and we want to come back to something, to center, and all those therapies and altered states of consciousness help you in that guidance, because we have so many scripts that we want to follow, definitions of success that our ego wants to follow, but it might not resonate with you on the long term.
Don't you think that this is a misconception when we say that altered states of consciousness, aren't they also true? Instead of saying that altered, do you consider them?
Yes, I would say you're right. It's altered states of consciousness. It's a term that even used in transpersonal psychology, but in fact, I would call expanded awareness.
Yeah.
So yeah, scratch that. Expanded awareness, but it's still you.
How do you find people that come to you and want to find purpose in their life?
Great question. And it does relate to that authentic path. Some people think that finding their purpose has to relate to their profession. And sometimes it is, but life is so rich. People change professions, and that's when they ask themselves what is their purpose, because maybe their previous career came to an end, like it was for me. It wasn't giving me any sense of realization or purpose, the transformational turning point that they want to know more. But what they might find during the session, and again, it's very individual, is not what to do, but how to do it. So, a lot of times I had clients who said, I want to know whether to go to this field or to that field. And they might get an answer. It doesn't matter which one. You can do even both. What matters is how. And when you dig deeper, it says you have to do it from your heart with different tips. I don't want to generalize for everybody or what tips they might get, but sometimes it could relate to their work or to taking a break. Their maybe mission is to now go within and take a break. So it is not something prescribed for everyone, and maybe it is, again, being more in contact with Earth. And in fact, I had a couple of cases that were published in the book by the name Finding Purpose, which was published by Michael Newton Institute Publishing. Because Michael Newton, he passed away, but we as therapists carry on his work. And now many books were written of the therapists that he taught. And I'm already a second or third wave of therapists. And we sometimes submit the cases that to us were the most interesting, transformative, and they get published. So I had 2 cases published in that book that came out 2 years ago, and it's called Finding Purpose, and you can find it on Amazon.
It's any difference between finding purpose and finding your mission in life?
I think people use that interchangeably.
I was just thinking that purpose is in a particular moment, and the mission, you will know it when you're having your gut intuition that is your mission, and you will know that you're in it. But on the evolutionary stage, from one chapter to the other, you can have different purposes that fulfill the overall path that you need to achieve.
Yeah. That's something interesting that we also may ask, if I'm pulled to ask, even in the womb, when I ask consciousness, when looking at your little body in the womb, what is your sense of what is life? Your life is going to be about, and you can, people can get some wonderful things. And it's not like mission in order to help others. It could be to experience love, to give love in different expressions, to become more kind, to develop bravery, and of course contribute to others in different ways. Everyone can have, or it could be just general like that. So I think we associate mission very often with contribution, but sometimes just living true to yourself. So I think, as you say, the purpose is something to live a next stage of life that feels more true, coherent, and clear to yourself, is something that you can do. But, again, regressing, looking back at my life, there were probably periods of time that I consider I was playing a role or performing or compensating something. In retrospective, those were the banks that brought me back to the place where I feel more true to myself, doing something that I like. Is it my mission? Maybe, maybe not, but it's something definitely that I feel I'm contributing. Am I doing it every day, 24 hours a day? No, because the sessions are long. I make sure that at no point I feel exhausted and not interested to do another session. I want to keep curiosity. So yeah, different for everyone. I think everyone has their, and I do ask, what does it mean for you? A purpose or mission life? And some people might consider it a task, next stage, next step, or next state.
It is a way in which you clean yourself after these sessions?
The clearing only when I feel. When you have some energies that you touch that feel sticky. But it is something that I learned to trust in the pool. But most of the sessions, they end up on such a high note that I actually want to carry that high note with me rather than cleanse from it.
If we were to do it, you're doing it in the sea, so with salt water, you're doing it with smoke, you're doing it with prayer, with what you're doing it? When you need to?
With my intention.
With intention.
Yeah, just intention.
As we were approaching the finish line, I would like to ask you, in this moment of your life, what would be one thing that the world needs to hear from you?
Everyone's path is so unique and precious. I would say every experience is meaningful, and just follow that meaning. Follow those experiences that resonate with your heart more. And if you stumble on something, or it's temporarily something that's uncomfortable, you don't have to compare yourself. You will realign. You will. And if you need help in that, ask your friends, sit with your close ones who will elevate you on your elevation path. That's all I can say, actually. There's not a huge universal message that I can give of humanity.
But it was powerful enough.
Okay, thank you.
I thank you very much. It was a great pleasure to speak with you. You were enlightening me in many ways. And I hope in future, maybe we will come back on this chair to continue our discussion.
Yes, I would be very happy to do so.
Thank you
Thank
so
you
much.
for inviting me.
For the rest of you, please subscribe if you didn't do it yet. Like, comment, and tell us how we can improve. And until next time, take care of yourself.